Thank you, everyone. Thank you, and I apologize for being so late. I think I think Northwest shares a little bit of an apology too, because I was stuck in Memphis. The flight got canceled, and we just jumped in a car and got here as soon as we could. So first of all, again, thank you for being with us today. I think that Marie-Therese Dominguez was able to give you a little bit of background about the Postal Service. And one of the things that I like to do when I talk about the Postal Service is I like to talk about our people, because our people are phenomenal. When you think about any government service, it's really all about the people and what kind of motivates our people. And I have to tell you, as somebody who started as a clerk and who carried for a while, carried some mail, and whose father was in the Postal Service for 40 years. So when you think about my family, it goes back to 1944 when he first joined the Postal Service. I can tell you that I bleed postal blue. And when I think about the Postal Service, I think about the day in and day out experience that we as an institution have with all Americans, because we do touch every American at over 140 million collection boxes, delivery points, 300,000 collection boxes. We're huge. And it's an interesting byplay, because as big as we are, we spend $13 billion a year on supplies and services, as an example. 200,000 trucks. I think Marie-Therese talked about it. As big as we are, we're really small town. Because what it all comes down to is an individual's experience with their letter carrier, an individual experience when they walk into a postal lobby and meet one of our clerks at the window. And I can't say enough about how great our people are, because I've experienced it throughout my career. When I was in charge of the Washington metropolitan area, we had this snowstorm, and it literally shut the place down. And what happened was we had like 4 or 5 people show up to work. When we had Hurricane Katrina, I went to visit down at the Gulf and visited some of the towns along the Gulf in Mississippi. And I went into one office, and I was talking to one of the clerks there, and she was irate at me. She was irate. She said, "I have a complaint." And I was thinking, well, okay, what's the problem? I was thinking, well, the conditions were pretty bad. They were using a generator, and we, had just gotten water in there. Her complaint was that she was there the day after the hurricane, and the postmaster was not there. I had to explain that the roads were shut down and the postmaster wasn't able to come in, but it was that sense of, service to our customers that really made the day for her. And we have all sorts of people down in Texas now who, may have lost homes, may not have electricity, but they're showing up to work every day, day in and day out, because of that notion of service. And that's what we in this institution are all about. Now, it is interesting when you're in public service, because first of all, you're not paid a heck of a lot of money, but you're paid a good living wage. And you have a lot of competing interests. Like I said, we have a lot of suppliers to the Postal Service, some $13 billion worth. Everybody in America, all 300 plus million, own the Postal Service and are customers of the Postal Service and have some good things to say about the Postal Service, and then sometimes some not good things to say. We have your elected officials in Washington, D.C. And so when it comes to doing things in a public setting, it's a kind of a different dynamic than in the private sector. Private sector, you have stakeholders. They're the stockholders. Those are the ones that you try to serve, and your goal is to get profit. In a public service, you're trying to balance both. You're trying to balance the needs of individuals, no matter where they are, where you serve them, with the needs of whatever institution you're serving, to be efficient and effective and provide the service that's required. And when you think about the Postal Service, we've had many accomplishments over the years, and right now the Dean mentioned that we're at record levels of service. Well, that's because of all of our employees pulling very hard. But when I got the job back in 2001, we had an event out in California, and we were honoring companies in the Postal Service that had mentoring programs for their people. that enable them to, get up the ladder. And we were very fortunate to have someone from the Mensa Society, the Mentoring Society, to come and speak to our postal forum out in California. Some 6,000 people were in attendance. And that person was Bill Russell. Now, there's different age groups here, so I'll tell you who Bill Russell is. Bill Russell is a famous basketball player, Hall of Famer, who I guess, to folks of the younger generation is the Michael Jordan of the era, okay, only much better, because he only lost one, that he didn't win a championship while he was playing. And his last year, he was a player coach. And so Bill Russell is part of the Mentoring Society, and he came to speak to this crowd and talk about mentoring. And beforehand, I was in a meeting, and they called about an hour and a half before the event. I was in a room with a bunch of customers, and they came running in, and they said, "We have a problem," and whispered in my ear. I said, "What's the problem?" "Well, Bill Russell's going to be about an hour early, and he's about like 2 minutes out, and we don't know what to do with him." And in a big event, they have this thing called a blue room where off the stage. I said, "Just bring him to the blue room." And the person left in a big hurry, and I said, "Well, sorry, folks, but I really have to run. My deputy here will take care of this meeting." I mean, grew up in the Bronx. I was a big fan of basketball, and the chance to sit down with Bill Russell for a while was just exciting to me. So I had to run, and I got there, and I'm talking to Bill Russell, and we were joined by Michael Capellas, who is now the CEO of First Data, but at the time was the CEO of Compaq Computers. He was the CEO of MCI for a while. But he came and joined us, and I was trying to talk to Bill Russell about basketball, and then Michael turns around and says, "Bill, Jack has a lot of great things going on for the Postal Service," and I started to describe how we were going to improve service, how we were going to eliminate 100,000 jobs, and by the way, we've eliminated over 150,000. And I talked about, what we were trying to do to change the law and become more competitive and more effective as an institution. And, as I was going through this, Bill Russell stops me and he says, "Young man, I'm worried about you." And, so here's this basketball legend, probably around 65, 70 years old. He says, he's worried about me. And I looked at him and I said, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm really worried about you." I said, "Well, what are you worried about?" He said, "What form of government do we have?" And I'm thinking, worried? What form of government? How's there a connection? And he turned around, I said, "Are you serious?" And he goes, "Yeah." He says, "What form of government do we have?" So I said, "Democracy." Now, since we're in the Clinton School of Clinton School here of Public Service, you probably all know that that's not the exact right answer, although I thought I was pretty proud of myself that at least he said I was right. We're a democratic republic, and you elect people to represent you, whether it's here in Arkansas or in Washington. And he says, "Well, what does that mean to you? What does a democracy mean to you?" And I said, "Well, it means one man, one vote. We all have an equal opportunity to participate in this great society." And he said, "That's good." So I felt pretty good. I figured the nuns, I was brought up in a Catholic school, nuns would be proud. I got 2 answers right, or at least I thought I had 2 right. And then he turned around and he said to me, "What is it a product of?" So what is the democracy that we all live in? What is it a product of? I'm slowing down so you all think about how you might have answered that question. So I said it was a product of enlightened people who came from Europe, who were tired of living under bureaucracies or sovereignties where they had no say in the government, and who were seeking religious freedom. Because a lot of the folks that came over, that's what it was, and that was the best answer I could come up with. And he turned around and he said, "That's a very good answer." He said, "Your teachers would have been proud." And I said, "That's good." I was kind of happy with myself. And he said, "But that's not what I was looking for." And I said, "So what is it?" So he turned around and he said to me that government our government and our democracy is a product of compromise. Product of compromise. And he said, "Sure." He said, "Over the years," he said, "you think that the people went in to sign the Declaration of Independence, that they all sat down and said, 'Hey, we all agree before we even get started'?" He said, "Do you think about anything that happens anywhere in government and think that there isn't debate, one side versus another, on any issue that might take place. And just like today, what's going on in the government today with, how much does the government do to help bail out those folks who are in trouble? So he said it's a product of compromise. And I thought that was pretty enlightening. I mean, here I'm talking to a basketball player, and he's got this view of the world, and well, that's pretty great. But I came back and I said, so why are you worried about me? And he told me, he says, I'm worried about you because you sound like a businessman. What you described in terms of what you want to do, in terms of service you want to provide to America, the need to become more efficient, and the notion that you think you're just going to get everyone behind you and make that happen. He said, I'm really concerned that you're going to have a nervous breakdown. He said, because, my perception of the Postal Service is that, it's an old line bureaucracy. Sure, we were there when the country started, and that there would be a lot of inertia. And the funny thing about it is I've used his discussion, and the talk that we've had, I've used it internally as well as externally, like today, to talk about the challenges of how do you provide a public service, and how do you balance the needs of everyone who want to have input in what you do, with the notion that you really, to provide an efficient government service, you have to make decisions, and at the end of the day, you can't please everybody. And so when I think of the Postal Service, I think that there are many different ways to get from point A to point B. So as an example, when you want to become more efficient, the way to do it is not to just have management unilaterally say, here's the way we want to go, and then dictate to our employees. The way is to engage our employees and make sure that they're on board, make sure that they understand and can buy into where we want to go for a couple things. First, for our mission, which is affordable universal service. So if we all can agree that there's a mission, that's the start, and then you can agree on how you get there. But as long as whatever you do doesn't somehow subvert the mission that you have at hand, then it's for good. And as far as I'm concerned, to get from here to there might be 10 different directions. And so as long as you're taking one that's moving you down the path in the right direction, even if you think it's somewhat sub-optimized versus what an ideal would be, if there's a solution that gets you 90% of what you want and the employees are engaged, by God, that's the way to go. Likewise, when it comes to dealing with Capitol Hill, we want to provide affordable universal service. Well, how do you become affordable? What are those things that you do, and what do you invest in? There are choices that you make along the way. And having as much input as possible is important. And we have a huge customer base. You're all part of our customer base, but we have some very large customers. We have 10 customers that give us more than $500 million a year in business. Now, we have to pay attention to what they're all about, because if we're not balancing their needs with your needs, John Q. Public, we might lose them. If we lose them, we're going to dramatically affect the service. So, again, when you think about public service, I don't think there's anything better that anyone can do in terms of being able to give back to the community, and in other words, of being able to contribute to the quality of life that we all as Americans enjoy. But I do think that there's a complexity to doing things within a government setting that is unlike the complexity you'd find anywhere else, because of the fact that there are so many interests that you're trying to serve. And at the end of the day, the people who are most effective in government are the ones that recognize that it is a matter of balancing interests, balancing needs, making the compromises necessary to, in effect, get the job done and stay focused. And so I find my job to be one of the most interesting jobs in America, maybe one of the most complex, because we have a strong union base. And I do believe in unions. I was a member of one. We have strong advocates on Capitol Hill. We have strong oversight with an inspector general. We're bound to be, when required by law, to be Sarbanes-Oxley compliant. We have an inspection service that oversees us, a GAO. And we have a very strong customer base, which makes us strong because You and everyone that uses us makes us that much better because you hold us accountable for what we do. And so, when I think of government service, public service, I think it's a world unto itself, but it's a very rewarding experience, and it's something that at the end of the day, yeah, I might have a lottery ticket in my pocket because that's the way I'm going to become a billionaire. But at the end of the day, I can go home at night and sleep well knowing that I've done something for my fellow citizens. So, again, I apologize for being a little late, but I'd be happy to take any questions that people might have.
Questions from anybody? There. That's fine, then we'll go back there next.
Hello, my name is Ann West, and I'm one of your mediators for the Redress Program. Would you talk a little bit about the success of the program and what you see for its future?
Well, let me talk a little bit more broadly about it. The Postal Service, like any government entity, has an opportunity for our employees to get resolution of workplace issues. And one issue that we have is people are concerned about equal employment. And we have an EEO system, Equal Employment Opportunity complaint process. And the way we deal with those complaints historically has been to have inside investigation of a complaint, and then we would have some interaction, but not a formalized interaction between management and the employee. But oftentimes it was the management team locally that did the investigation of a complaint of a local employee, and it was kind of unfair. And so what we've done is we've changed that system. Whenever there's a complaint, first thing we want to do is resolve the complaint between the employee and the employer. And we create a mediation process, which you participate in, and we sit the employer and the employee down, and we work through what the issues are. And oftentimes, I think our resolution rate is up above 70%, maybe in the 80s right now, because the quicker you can get a problem on the table and the quicker you can have people come objectively and deal with it, the better off you are. And in addition to that, we now do outside investigations. We have a group that coordinates investigations that are done by contractors. It's so good and so efficient that we now have other government agencies that use us to do the investigations. But we've gone from, with equal employment opportunity complaints, we've gone from being an asterisk on the federal government reports. It used to be an asterisk saying, here's the federal number. The asterisk would say, we've excluded the Postal Service because they're so bad. And they would drag the federal number down. We went from that to no asterisk at all, to today there's now an asterisk. We had to exclude the Postal Service numbers because they're so good, it would have made the federal government look better than it is. But that is one complaint avenue. Another is grievances. And when I became Postmaster General, we had over 125,000 grievances awaiting arbitration. And arbitration is a very formal process. It's after all the different opportunities to sit down with one another have been exhausted. And it would take about 4 years to have a complaint go through arbitration. So whether it was EEO or arbitration, when I became Postmaster General, I sat down with our union representatives on our management associations. We have unions for our managers. And I told them that these processes were broke. And I told them that they are the problem. And that it was in everybody's interest to fix this, because what you don't want to have is a workplace issue fester for years. And when I look back at some of the things that I saw over my career, I was the Vice President of Labor for a while. And I knew nothing about labor when I got the job, but like the first week I had an arbitration issue, something that got arbitrated up in New York, found its way all the way to my desk in Washington, and it was over a half an hour in a delivery unit. And it was whether one craft got a half hour of overtime or another craft. I sent it back. I said, give everyone the pay. This is crazy. And so what we've done is we've basically, with the mediation program that we've just discussed for EEO's redress, what we also did with grievances, we sat down with the unions and we said, why are these grievances occurring? And it's because there was a lack of understanding of the contract on the part of employees, on the part of managers, and also on the part of arbitrators, because if there was a complaint and a grievance process, it ended up in binding arbitration, and oftentimes they didn't know how to interpret the contract. So what we did was we wrote manuals on how to interpret the contract. And we wrote all these manuals that basically took the contract and put all these different circumstances and all these hypotheticals. If this happens, this is how you interpret the contract. And so now the only thing left for an arbitrator to look at is what happened. Not how do you interpret the contract, but exactly what happened. And we've driven out over 80% of those grievances just by sitting and talking to one another, because if there's a friction in the workplace, what you want to do is resolve it. You don't want it to sit there and fester for 4 years and create an unhappy work environment. Now, one of the things I'm proudest of is, as a result of the Redress Program for EEOs and joint contract manuals on how we would deal with grievances and how we would interpret contracts for handling of grievances, we've actually improved satisfaction in the workplace. And if you think about a heavily unionized sector and the loss of 150,000 jobs, one would expect that management and labor would be going at it. But we do an external measure of our employee satisfaction, and that has actually grown over the time that we've been reducing the number of workers. Because our message is, it's not about management winning or labor winning. It's all about our mission, and our mission of affordable universal service means that we provide the highest level of service we possibly can at the lowest price that we possibly can. And again, that sticking to the mission has worked very well for the Postal Service.
My name is David Bachman, and we at this table represent one of your suppliers. We're a transportation company hauling the mail, so we're very interested in service and very interested in volumes. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the new shipping and mailing services division that started in July and what you anticipate the volumes may be in the future, since they've been down this past year.
Okay. Well, let me just talk about the fact that in 2006 there was a new law. December of 2006, a new law came into place. And what that new law did was it divided our products into market dominant or monopoly products, which is letters and magazines and catalogs, and competitive products, which is express mail and priority mail and other package services. And what I recognized was that we were not configured properly in marketing in order to go into the marketplace with two different types of product. The market dominant or monopoly product is capped at the rate of inflation. That's as high as we can raise our rates. And the reason that they did that was because they wanted to protect mail, as we know it today, from having prices go too high. And they also asked us to measure in greater detail the level of service that we're providing. So the goal there was maintain affordability by putting caps on how high you could raise your prices, and improve service by measuring different types of mail that we hadn't been measuring up till now. And on the competitive side of the aisle, with the package services, they basically told us, get out there and compete. For years, the Postal Service was like half in and half out when it came to packages, because it was, well, sometimes, yeah, you don't want to compete with the private sector. But then when private sector wasn't delivering mail to certain locations, hey, Postal Service, get out there and deliver. In fact, it wasn't until the early 1900s that the Postal Service was allowed to deliver anything more than 4 pounds. And the reason that they went above 4 pounds was because there were communities in rural America where people were paying huge surcharges to have packages delivered. And in inner cities, the lower socioeconomic sections of inner cities, likewise paying surcharges. And in both cases, they were getting delivery on a sporadic basis. So they said, well, we need the people in rural America to be able to participate in the U.S. economy. And so what they did was they said, Postal Service, you get out there and you deliver packages along with mail. And so we were kind of there as a backstop. And so now what's happened is we've basically said, as we look forward, we have to make a decision. Are we going to be in that game or not? And then with the new law that was passed in 2006, they said, go compete. Okay, go out there and try and grow the package business, make a profit, but the profit, any profits we make, we pay a tax on it, and we pay it to ourselves so that we can provide universal service and keep post offices open and keep delivering 6 days a week to rural America. That's what that whole thing is designed to do. So organizationally, what we've done is we've changed the organizational structure recently in marketing to put one group in charge of, competitive packages. We're using pricing freedoms that we now have to, just like the private sector, you create a price based on, your cost and a good, healthy profit margin. And so we're out there doing that. We're hoping to grow that business, and we're already starting to see growth. While everything else in the economy is hurting, our package volume is actually growing, which is good because we're out there competing. Our employees now are really engaged because they know we want to be in the business, and we will be by law. On the other side of the coin, mail, it's slowing down because people are going to the internet. In addition to that, the economy is just really slowing down, and we can see it in mail. We've probably had a bigger drop in mail volume on a percentage basis than we've ever had in our history. So we're trying to balance now, our use of resources, basically work hours, to this new workload. But we're organized now from a market standpoint to deal with the two different groups of products we have, mail or market dominant and competitive or packages. And we have folks focused on making sure that we keep our rates below inflation and drive service up. And we have folks who are focused on getting out there and competing and using pricing and using anything that they can to grow the package business and grow our profits there.
Got time for one more question. One more right here.
Hi, I'm Sharon Welch Blair, and I am the president of the Downtown Neighborhood Association. So I'm actually representing them as much as myself as we talk about this. But what I heard you say basically in your message initially was that we have some suppliers who really probably keep us in the green so that we can provide service to these people that expect it and we have to do it, but I kind of got the feeling we're not all that excited about it. And that may not be what you intended. In fact, I'm sure it's not what you intended.
Not excited about what?
Not excited about the fact that you really have to be providing service to all these folks out here who have to get the mail on a daily basis.
No, if I created that impression of you for you, then that was not what I was intending to do.
I really didn't think you intended that.
Here's what I'm basically saying. I'm basically saying there are people who, anytime we give a discount to a big mailer, they cry foul. How could, a big mailer who's mailing $800 million worth of mail with you, qualify to pay a couple of pennies less for an envelope, okay? And the fact of the matter is, if we didn't give them that incentive to stay with us, they might walk away.
Sure.
And what people don't recognize is that they provide a lot of the dollars that fund delivery of mail. In fact, if you looked at addresses in America, because think about, you mail your bills to the local utility company. If you looked at addresses in America and said, where's the break-even point in terms of, what percentage of Americans receive enough mail to pay for the service that they get versus the percentage that don't, 90% don't get enough mail to pay for the service they get.
Oh, I absolutely understand.
And so the Postal Service is designed, and the fact that we have monopoly is designed for us to, in effect, balance out the need for service that everyone should enjoy, and it's been decided by our elected officials that that's what they would like to have, and they view that as a right of every American to get mail. You have to balance that with, again, the need to pay for it. And so you have to look at those two. And that's all I was trying to say. It's in a world where you have to make compromises, you have to figure out and realize that part of the compromise is the fact that you have some addresses that really more than pay for themselves, and that anyone who would think about taking or competing with us, they would go serve those 10% of Americans, and they'd walk away from the 90%. But if we did likewise with businesses, we would, in effect, hurt ourselves. So, in effect, I guess you could say I was making an argument to support the notion of a monopoly if people want to continue to enjoy the service that they do today from the Postal Service.
And as a small business person who runs 2 businesses, I understand that. So I appreciate what you're saying. What I really wanted to, and I'm glad you clarified that because that is a real source of concern in that I think, based on what I've heard, you really have done a great job probably resolving the issues within the work staff and the people that, you know, we don't refer to the term postal like we used to. And I think that's a great tribute to what you've been able to do. With that being said, though, and I think most of the people here would agree with me, and it's particularly true in our area, our service is way below what I have expected to receive over the last 20, 25 years before the last 10 or 12 years. In fact, our particular area, the South Side Station, we've had serious issues for a number of years. And when I first moved into the neighborhood 15 years ago, I wrote a letter, really concerned because I run 2 businesses out of this particular location and had serious problems. And when I sent a letter, it was addressed and things really worked well for a while. I sent a second letter. Yeah, I will. I sent a second letter, and that was in 2001 or 2002, and I sent it to the Postmaster General, and I never even got a response. So I'd like to know, beyond being able to send a complaint over the internet, which we've not been able to get any satisfaction on, and talking to the postmaster in our local area, how can we get serious issues addressed when it appears we're getting ignored?
Well, first of all, I apologize for your concerns, and the way to do it is obviously deal with the station manager, the postmaster, and then the district manager locally. And I will bring that up. I'm going to meet with the district later on today, and I'll bring that up to them. But let me just talk a little bit beyond that, because one of the things you deal with when you're in an institution that's so large, serving so many Americans, you know, we have this endless opportunity for problems. I was on a Capitol Hill one time, and somebody said, waved a piece of mail in front of me and said, look, you know, you have a delay here. And I said, well, Congressman, let me just be real frank with you. We deliver over 200 billion pieces of mail. You know, right now we're up to the point where we're 95% accurate at the time. Now we're at 97% accurate. I said, so with 5%, you know, inaccuracy, there are 10 billion pieces out there that are delayed. So, you know, I don't doubt that you found one, you know, but you have to look at this in its entirety. So what we're trying to do, and what we are doing, is we are moving ahead, and we'll, within about a year, put a code on every piece of mail. And every piece of mail, the code will tell us who the sender was, the receiver was. It will have a unique identifier. It'll have the class of mail. And we'll be able to measure service, not just on a sampling basis, which is what we do today, but on an individual basis. And you'll come in with a complaint, and we'll be able to hit a button, and we'll be able to say, whoa, she's right. Either that, or we'll be able to say, nope, you're wrong. And therein lies the biggest issue we have. We need tracking and tracing for packages, and we're going to put a code on every piece of mail that's produced by commercial mailers, and we're going to create an opportunity, probably within a couple of years, for individuals to put a code on a piece of mail, go online and see where your mail is. That's ultimately will take all of the innuendo out, because oftentimes it's very easy to blame the post office for problems that mailers have. I can't tell you how many times people have said, hey, you know, political mailings are great. This on high on the radar screen. Printers don't print the mail in time to get it in before elections and then blame us. Well, we had to put systems in place now where we log everything so we could prove to them that, you know, it was not right. So we're going to take all the mystery out of the mail, but that doesn't solve your problem in the short run. In the short run, we'll address it with the district manager later today. Okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to the Postmaster General. Thank you.